Hello, hello. Is that working, Michael? All right.
It is. It
Well,
is.
welcome to the Michael Sisco Show. You know, went off to a rough start because my cruddy snowball microphone that usually works. This one apparently is a dud. So, anyways, welcome to the show, folks. You might remember me from Hearth and Fire. I've switched. We're going to live stream from now on with my immaculate, totally real library in the background. I paid a lot of money for this Victorian library. So, anyways, I think we'll just skip my stupid monologue that I was going to do because I'm frustrated about the microphone and being late. So, big guest, as you see. I think we'll just skip my stupid monologue that I was going to do because I'm frustrated about the microphone and being late. Oh, my D-Live is on. Thank Boomer Tech.
Yeah.
All right. How do I even? I thought that was. I was gonna blame you for that, and
no, sir. Everything's good on my end.
It's like, what are you doing, brother Augustine? But anyways, welcome to my super smooth show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I've been better. I rushed to set this all up, and then nothing's going right. I was gonna have a nice little intro video. That's not done. We're gonna blame Eric for that.
So. Yeah, come on, get a grip, Eric. Whoever you are.
Yeah, he's obviously. I don't know. He's a jogger. Just kidding. I'm gonna get kicked off like instantly. How many viewers do we have? 3 people. 4. We're up to 4. Anyways, so what I wanted to talk about today was I saw one of your previous videos where you were criticizing fascism specifically. And so I thought it would be a good idea to kind of take a traditionalist view towards all 3 of the competing systems from the 20th century. So a good place to start. Why don't we define what it means to be a traditionalist first, and then we can go from there.
I would describe traditionalism as an orientation towards the eternal. I can't really think of a better description than that. I mean, each religion has its own version of traditionalism, and then you have the Evolian version, which is just perennialism. But since we're talking about Christian traditionalism, for us, we will be considering, obviously, the Christian faith as what is eternal, and just oriented towards that instead of any of the myriad of passing, changing forms that governments and other things tend to go throughout time. So something rooted in space, or I'm sorry, rooted outside of time and space rather than rooted within time and space, I would say.
Okay. So why don't we start with let's start with the first big, I guess the one that's on everyone's mind lately. Let's do communism. So what is communism, and is it separable from Marxism? Are they 2 distinct things, or what is it?
So because I've been reading so much Evola lately, I'm basically going to do my best to argue from his perspective, but through a Christian lens, because obviously we don't want to do all the like pagan butt magic that he tended to be into. But he had a lot of good political ideas, and a lot of what he said was correct and overlaps with our view. So I kind of want to give a little meta answer first, like a bigger answer first, because there's kind of 3 angles that I think this discussion needs to be approached from, which is what is the best political system, and what does that even mean? So I guess that's kind of 2 questions rolled into one. Does it matter for the salvation of our souls what political system we live in? And then does it matter at all what we think, given that we are not in a position to change or implement any particular system? So now to come back down the scale, well, let's start with defining it like you said. So Evola would have defined communism essentially as, actually, you know what? I have to back up again. So I have to explain his hierarchy first. So Evola basically saw proper political systems as quadripartite, meaning being composed of 4 castes or classes, if you will, by which there's a spiritual authority at the top, like a monarch, and then a nobility, aristocracy, warrior class beneath that serves the monarch, who himself serves God, in our perspective. And then below that, the third class is that of merchants, and below that is basically the peasant or servant class. And so communism, from that perspective, which I more or less agree with anyway, that hierarchy, that quadripartite hierarchy, communism would be the system of government in which the way society is geared is towards the virtues of the lowest class of society, towards the common, not particularly intelligent, not particularly spiritual, just kind of the undifferentiated, faceless, non-individual, collectivistic mass of people. It's giving that group power and reshaping things according to its values. Now, in order to get there, the other parts of the hierarchy have to already be derided or destroyed. So basically, societies go through this system, he would have said, where it starts with the spiritual authority being at the top, and then it gets inverted more and more on the way down. So I would describe communism, along with all of its the other shades of it, like liberalism, Marxism, these are really all shapes of the same thing, or forms of the same thing, would be the, how do I put this? Usurpation by the lowest, basest caste of society. And I don't mean caste in a racial or even a vocational way. I'm talking about the state of the spirit, the state of the person's spirit. Communism is the exaltation of what is lowest, is how I would describe it. I'm not sure, how would you describe it? Do you have a different view on that?
Well, I would probably have emphasized the elevation of the state into the place of God. I don't know if that's more of a Marxist as opposed to separating, because I know Karl Marx, that was certainly his attitude. Was I mean, he viewed religion as problematic because it was, I guess he didn't think that people could have the divided loyalties. So in essence, the state kind of replaced what God is and the role of religion in people's lives. But it certainly, I guess, economically, it would, if you're thinking in economic terms, the state controlling the means of production, but that's kind of that's not the most troublesome part. I'm not completely opposed to even nationalizing or having some level of control. But I think ultimately the problem is the state being the ultimate, the last line there.
Yeah. Well, that is an important point, because the power that's given to the basest and the lowest is largely meant to be temporary and just a weapon or mechanism by which the bad oligarchs, it's like a shadow monarchy or a shadow hierarchy, by which those people acquire and expand their own power. Which is actually one of my critiques of Evola, was that his critiques of democracy were assuming that it was real and what it presented itself to be, instead of being a spiritual hierarchy, just a demonic spiritual hierarchy that had this kind of like this illusion of choice. But we can get into that part when we get more into the liberal democracy section. Plenty to criticize all of them.
I almost skipped ahead because you said it was the same thing as liberals, but so maybe we can wait before we clarify what you meant on that.
Sure.
So is communism, obviously, I mean, for us, it's based on what we just said, it's pretty obvious that communism itself is not compatible with the Christian worldview, but could you expound on that a little bit?
Well, I don't necessarily have a problem with the idea that the people at the top of the economic hierarchy should not be there. And, that the idea that, 8 or 10 individuals have half of the nation's wealth is obviously absurd. So they're not wrong about that. The problem is that what is voluntary and meant to be the fruit of a charitable heart in Christianity the sharing of your possessions with others, coming from the idea that it doesn't really belong to you anyway, that it all belongs to God, is then compelled by violence. Things are taken from you and given to people. And of course, you have no say in who it goes to, which is also a problem. So the issue is also, according to the Bible, that those who do not work shall not eat. So the idea of taking possessions by force from those who are productive, from those who do things and produce and build and create, and giving it to people who don't feel like doing those things, is also not a Christian concept. You could, of course, argue from the empathy position that some people are unable to work. So we do have social nets in place for people that simply can't because they're not able to do so. But of course, the problem is you create a system of rewarding laziness or rewarding various forms of dysfunction. Like, for example, Jesse Lee Peterson was talking about this recently. How I saw the video recently, I should say. It was an old interview where he says that in the Black community, they are incentivized to single motherhood because if a father enters the picture, the woman gets less money from the government. So now you're incentivizing bad behavior, which is different from helping people who need it temporarily on their way to re-engaging with society or finding a new job. So I think that there can be a blend of the positive intention with the negative outcomes, and that's not even counting the people who are doing this deliberately and maliciously to harm other communities, which is the real problem that we have in our society, is that they have a way of making things sound good when in fact most people, look at the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, perfect example, are basically just pawns in an agenda that they don't really understand, whereby they think that they're going to be the ones in charge and they're going to create this world of social justice and equality and equity, when, as Yuri Bezmenov said 40 years ago, the second their purpose is served, they're probably just going to be killed or discarded. At least that's what's happened in the past. And that's when the real shadow power people come in and say, no, you were never going to be in charge. And Yuri specifically mentions Nicaragua as an example of what can happen when the people who you temporarily empower think that they're going to be in charge, and they get very upset when they find out that's not the case. So the fruits of Marxism and communism everywhere they go is the same. It's mass genocide. It's never peace. It's never equality. Obviously, Genrikh Yagoda, who most people listening have never heard of, killed 10 million Christians, essentially. This socialist. Never peace. It's never equality. Obviously, Genrikh Yagoda. What's going on with the audio there? 10 million Christians, essentially. This socialist. So people, everyone's heard of Adolf Hitler, right? No one's heard of Genrikh Yagoda, who killed far more people immediately beforehand, actually. And if you just look through the communist dictators, I mean, the kill count is it's unmatched. No system is responsible for more intentional inflicting of death than communism. It was the bloodiest system of the 20th century and is shaping up to probably be the bloodiest of the 21st century as well. So I think that no matter how well-intentioned it sounds, if you judge things by their fruit, there's no argument that communism leads to anything positive really at all for anybody besides the people in charge.
Yeah, I know. Hang on one sec. I'm trying to set up this. I didn't have these super chats set up, I don't think. But yeah, it's interesting. Now they're trying to change the numbers. Like they're like, I guess they caught on to the fact that we were using I got to mute my entropy screen. But hang tight. All right, there we go. Just in case anybody wants to do super chats, I'm going to put the link in the chats right there. So you can send it through Entropy, and we would be happy to have. They're being split with Brother Augustine today. So, but yeah, I was saying it's kind of interesting. Some of the lefties have caught on to, when we point out how many people died under socialism compared to, or Marxism compared to Hitler, they've started to try and just add kind of the auxiliary killings, like the war murder, the war people that died in war to Hitler's number. to get that number up to compete, but there's no competition there.
No, there isn't.
So, anyways, all right. You want to move anything else to hit on communism?
No, I think that more or less covers it.
Right.
Well, I actually have one more thing to add, which is one of the many and countless reasons why Republicans lose on absolutely every issue and have for the last 70 years, is they don't comprehend that the spirit that afflicts communists, that causes that demonic urge to violence and hurting and destruction, is not one that can be argued with or persuaded or negotiated with. You cannot convince one of these people to stop what they're doing based on any kind of principles of charity or fairness or kindness. The only thing that has ever stopped communists is restraining them by force. There is no other solution to it. And these idiots in our government, which is really both sides, like literally everyone on both sides of it, are still trying to play by rules that have never worked and can't seem to figure out why they have never won at anything and continue to lose at everything, because you see them trying the same failed, stupid strategies over and over, no matter how many times they don't work. You know, they do the Dems are the real racists, Antifa are the real fascists. So what they're holding the left to standards that the left never really believed in to begin with, and were always just weapons. And so the right is arguing completely, not the right, I take that back, there is no right wing in America. The Republicans are arguing completely within the Democrats' frame, using Democrat defined and controlled terms, and continue to do this despite the fact that it does not work. Which is why I don't understand why people are loyal to the Republican Party or to any of these people. They don't care about you, and if they do, they're too stupid to help you anyway. So communism wins unless you stop them, unless you force them to stop. That's my final statement on that, I would say.
All right, well, let's get to what everybody knows is my favorite one. Just kidding. Just kidding. So let's go to fascism. And this kind of reminds me, you did mention, conservatives love doing the, but you're the real fascist, which drives me crazy because they obviously have no idea what it actually is. And why do you need to call communists fascists when they're communists? Who cares? They're communists. That's bad enough.
Yeah.
So what is your understanding of what fascism actually is?
It depends on, okay, so the real definition is it was a 20th century European response to communism is the real answer. But the form that it took depends on the country, the person leading it, what their ideas were. But overall, it's kind of like a cultural immune response to communism. It's once things reach the point where people finally understand that you cannot end this except by force, which is sad. No one wants to say that. This is just the truth of the situation. Once they get their hooks in, it doesn't end peacefully ever, never has. That a bunch of different countries all kind of figured this out just about the same time, and they didn't all agree with each other. They weren't all operating from the same principles. Obviously, Mussolini was not Franco, was not Hitler, was not Cadriano. Even Imperial Japan, you could argue, was kind of fascist in a certain sense, but the basic principle that they all shared in common, even though they all had different religions and different ideas, was basically a return, or at least an attempt to return to form, to return to hierarchy and order, as opposed to just chaos, which is what communism tends to unleash. So it was if you compare, for example, the Byzantine Empire, they were quite fashy in a certain sense, right? They did not tolerate subversion. Some of them did not tolerate paganism at all. Sometimes they went a bit extra, as the Zoomers say, in my opinion. But overall, that's how I would define it: as a 20th century response to communist attack.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of think it was an attempt to recreate what the old world had with the monarchs, but without actually attaching it to the Christian tradition or any sort of divine thing above the who's now replacing the monarch, so like the dictator or whatever you want to call him, chancellor. An attempt to create that without the divine, divorcing the divine from basically natural order and hierarchy.
Well, that was actually Evola's main critique of fascism, which was he saw it as a step in the right direction, but still ultimately rootless and not kind of getting the point. A few of the 20th century, what we call the axis of evil, right, were the traditional societies. Imperial Japan was very religious because their politics is their religion. It's just one thing, where the emperor is essentially their god or the incarnation of their god, and there's no separation, at least there wasn't, between politics and religion for Imperial Japan. Franco was Catholic, Cadriano was Orthodox, but Evola's main critique of Mussolini was that it was the preeminence of the state. There was no spiritual authority there. And Mussolini didn't have a particularly well-defined idea for what he was actually trying to do. He himself acknowledged that the deed came before the doctrine. He was just like, let's fight. Oh, now what? And Hitler, who was Evola's least favorite fascist, he saw as kind of vulgar and stupid because not only was Hitler's idea of Aryan not remotely similar to the actual Indo-Aryan society, which was a deeply religious traditionalist society, but everything was bastardized down to biological materialism for Hitler, where it was, do you have the German blood or not? Which is not spiritual, obviously. And Hitler sometimes gave lip service to Christianity in public, even though privately he kind of saw himself as the giver of the new revelation, positive Christianity as he called it, which has nothing to do with Jesus Christ as the Son of God or the gospel or anything like that. But yeah, Evola would agree that the ultimate failing of fascism was its lack of spiritual authority. So this goes back to the quadripartite society, the hierarchy I described earlier, where, okay, it's a step in the right direction away from the plebeian class and away from the merchant class, but now it's based around the warrior ethos, where it's still lacking that something transcendent, something above humanity guiding those warriors, where it becomes more about the honor of the warrior. So as opposed to like fighting for your king, your divine king, fighting for your god, it just becomes fighting for your own glory and your own legend, like a gladiator or something might do, or a soldier of fortune, like someone who wants to have a reputation for being a good warrior or a good soldier or expanding the empire, making more money for the empire, but is not actually himself subject to any kind of spiritual authority. So it would be like a crusader, for example, who didn't care about the church and just decided to go, plunder and rape, and this did happen a lot. They just want to collect, steal artwork and gold and do horrible things because they were no longer connected to that spiritual authority that it should have been. So he kind of has that mixed view of crusaders. Like he kind of liked the idea, but not so much the actions of the men themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've heard some people kind of describe National Socialism distinct from and apart from fascism. I'm not sure how true that actually is. But
Evola would have agreed with the distinction. He would have separated National Socialism from the overall idea of fascism.
Yeah, I mean, Hitler seemed to have, like, he was really good at identifying the social ills. That he was good at diagnosing the problems, but
yeah, the social ills were not particularly hidden in Weimar Germany.
Well, not even really before World War I. The seed was there too. So
true.
But what would you say are its biggest strengths?
What, fascism?
Yeah.
I would say it is strong only insofar as it would overlap with the traditional Christian idea of empire, of authority coming from a single source, who in some cases was subject to the church or to God. Even if you look through the Byzantine Empire, the emperors themselves were subject to the church, and the church often chastised and rebuked and penanced them. So, for example, when Theodosius I got very upset that a bunch of his guys were killed, he lost his mind and had like 7,000 people murdered. St. Ambrose of Milan, who also converted St. Augustine of Hippo, he was the bishop of Milan, excommunicated Theodosius, the emperor, said, "You will not receive communion again until I'm satisfied that you are sufficiently repentant for what you've done." So for months, Theodosius went to church in Milan in regular peasant clothing. He was not allowed to wear his imperial garb, and he was not even allowed into the service. He had to wait in the, I think it's called it's either the nave or the narthex. I always get the two confused. Which one is the outside waiting room?
The narthex.
The narthex. He had to wait in the narthex, crying.
What are you, a catechumen?
Sometimes I feel like one. The more I learn, the less I know. And so he was subject to the church. Saint Justinian, who is often considered kind of the apex of Christian monarchy, for better or for worse, spent most of his free time studying the Bible with monks and bishops. So anytime you have a monarch or a dictator, basically a monarch becomes a dictator when he separates himself from spiritual authority, when he decides that he himself is the cause and the source of his own authority rather than God. That is where it becomes a problem. The places where fascism overlaps with traditional orthodox political systems, and to be fair, I think you could make a strong argument that Christians should have nothing to do with politics at all, but comparing to the Byzantine Empire, the traditional monarchy, it would be similar insofar as not tolerating degeneracy and putting a fast and violent end to things that harm cultural well-being and particularly misleading of children. I think those it has in common with that, but there's more that it does wrong than it got right, and the parts that it did get right are meaningless outside of a proper Christian context, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, just for fun, and I disagree with you. I think we should try and be a part of a political solution, but we'll get there. We will get there. Just for fun, is it preferable to communism?
It depends who you are. For some people, communism is very lucrative, and they get a lot of money and power. And for other people, fascism is very lucrative and powerful. So I would say that is contextual. Now, I don't want to sound... So one of Ivola's critiques of Hitler, and he writes about this in his essays in an amazing book called The Traditionalist Confronts Fascism that Arctos Publishing put out, which is a series of Ivola's essays on this topic, and has, I think, my favorite book cover I've ever seen. Arctos does really good book covers, as a side note. One of his critiques of Hitler was that he was a complete relativist, where he did not see truth as being some objective reality, but rather as an an extension of race. So Hitler would have said that what is true depends on what helps any particular race succeed. So a truth for Jews is different than a truth for Christians, is different than a truth for Africans. He believed in complete relativism, one of Hitler's many and varied failings. So I'm not trying to sound like that, because that's not what I mean, because I don't think truth is relative at all. But what system is best for you is relative. And one of our Orthodox philosophers, Ivan Ilyin, wrote an excellent essay on this very topic called Forms of Sovereignty that Mark Hackard translated, and you can find on his website, The Soul of the East, in which he makes the very good point that what form of government is best is not a blanket thing, that it depends very much on what group of people you're talking about, what time period they live in, where they live, the history of that group, even the agricultural context of that group, like what food they have available. Because something that might work, like you might be able to say that democracy works for a certain small group of people, that when applied to a bigger group of people falls apart completely. Obviously, look out your window, we're experiencing the truth of that point of view right now. Where if you limit voting to people with skin in the game and a proven history of responsibility and success, that's very different than people who can't tie their shoes or make a single good decision for their own lives, for some reason should have an equal say in how anyone else gets to run their lives, which is a ridiculous...
Repeal the 19th.
Idea. I mean, none of these things are ever going to get repealed, because once people have power, they don't vote themselves out of it. And which is what the subversive people knew. You know, once certain things are in place, there's no going back. Which is why I don't plan on participating in American politics ever again. It's a waste of time. It's a complete waste of my time and everyone else's time. But you know, more power to you guys. The best you have is 4 more years of limbo before we collapse completely into this demonic hellscape. So I hope Trump wins. I'm not going to vote. I'm thinking about voting for the golden retriever from the movie Air Bud. He seems very trustworthy and noble to me in that film. Great actor. I might vote for him as a write-in. I might vote for Kanye just to amuse myself. I don't know.
I voted for Vince McMahon last time, so.
What's that?
I voted for Vince McMahon last time as a write-in. Yeah.
You know what? The man knows how to run an organization.
True. It's true. And he obviously knows politics. I mean.
Yeah, the politics, the entertainment world is its own politics, I'm sure. So he dominated that whole thing for a very long time.
We have a comment. May as well read it, even though we don't have any super chats yet. But
we're reading free comments now? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, since we're new, we got to build an audience. Maximus Wolf says, what he said about Christians not being a part of a political system is 100% correct. Michael means well, but is completely wrong on that score. Nothing could be more futile than systemic agitation. So I guess he's saying I'm wrong. Yeah. Well, that might be. I could be wrong.
I'm just saying you could easily make the argument from the Bible, from the way the apostles lived, that getting involved in politics has nothing to do with the Christian life. Obviously, there's the desire in all of us to make things better. I think that's a common human desire. Make things better for me and my family and people around me, or the whole country. But then you look at Christians in politics, and it wasn't all puppies and rainbows either. Some of the stuff that our emperors did was really no better than what some of the pagan emperors did to Christians in terms of what they did to the pagans. And I don't see Jesus ever mentioning anything like what happened. So I think you could make an argument either way, saying it's good that Christianity has some influence in the legal system. And I think you could just make either argument. I myself am undecided on which one I think is right. And if you're going with traditional Christianity, again, it depends what area you're looking at.
Yeah, well, we don't really have there's no real context for kind of what we're in today.
You'll find church fathers arguing against Christians in politics, and you'll find them saying that the wicked should fear the righteous. St. John Chrysostom said. Big fans of give Christians power and then persecute the pagans to the point of death, which is
what even was politics in the 3rd and 4th century? I mean, it wasn't really.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, we had emperors then and an empire, so it was kind of. And now we're trying to navigate out of a liberal democratic system that's on the brink of collapse, and we have to figure out how to preserve our ability to even maintain our community, our traditional Christian communities.
Well, if we zoom out a little bit, Jesus did not promise we would attain some perfect political utopia. And in fact, he promised the exact opposite. He said, just so y'all know, everything is going to suck really bad. Satan's going to take over the world. And only after that is he going to come back and fix things. So there is no permanent political solution, because even if you figured out the most amazing, every little aspect figured out down to the letter, something like what Kurt Doolittle thinks he's doing, right? Just sitting in your room for a decade trying to plan everything out. Even if you do that, even if you somehow attain the money and power to implement it, which he never will, which none of us ever will, it would still not last, because that is not what that's not what our reality is. We don't live in a world where anything is permanent except for orthodoxy. We don't live in a world of permanent political systems. And in fact, I'm reading this book right now that I'm going to read more of after this interview, because I just started it yesterday, called Defending Constantine by Peter Leithart. It's a relatively thick tome, just about the state of the Roman Empire when Constantine ascended to the throne. I mean, what Octavius did lasted for a couple hundred years before it started to fall apart, right? What America did lasted for less than 200 years before the entire thing fell apart. So even if you get the world's smartest men and blah, 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 political permanence is just not a reality of life on Earth, which is why I said in the beginning of this interview, one of the questions we have to ask is, does any of this matter at all? So I'm starting to lean towards no, But I also, none of us, I don't think, myself included, can completely neglect that desire to make things better. Like we all have that urge, that impulse. At least any man with, you know, an ounce of testosterone in his blood wants to like fight the bad guys and put the good guys in charge, and, you know, give the wicked their due, and, you know, and I have that same mentality. I'm very upset that so few of the evil people in our country are being punished. It drives me insane. I wish it didn't. I wish I could take my own advice. You know, it helps to not look at news and Facebook and whatnot. But that's just a reality. I mean, what's happening now is not somehow different from what Christ said was going to happen at all. You know, we live in a world that's temporary, that until things are recapitulated is always going to be this. War and violence is the fallen state of human nature. Competition, war, fighting. And yes, there are a lot of people doing things to make that worse, and there are systems you could put in place that would temporarily make it better, but that would fall apart too, because this is what all of Ecclesiastes is about. Everything rises and falls. Nothing rises and falls under the sun.
I don't think it was like Saint Constantine and the legalization of Christianity and the empire becoming Christian. I don't think that just like happened. I think there was some sort of efforts that led to the conversion of Constantine and the emancipation of Christians. That, I mean, so there's obviously a Christian tradition of statecraft that is beyond just complete absolute. I mean, I can understand the argument of not wanting to get into involved in our system, because it is completely divorced from Christian tradition and culture. I just have that urge to I don't know. I just feel like it's like my moral responsibility to, because as Christians, our default position is to be obedient to the civic authority, right? So
to a degree.
So that being said, yes, I think I agree with you on the Trump thing. Like 4 more years we might get, but it is just buying time. Yeah. For the most part, it's obviously collapsing into crazy stuff. But I think we need I think we need that time. But I think it is, as Christians, it is our duty to operate within the framework. For those of us who will be doing, there's nothing wrong with completely disconnecting and just living the spiritual life. But I don't necessarily think that's for everybody. But for those of us who are trying to enact change, it's our duty not to be revolutionaries, to work within the framework of what we have. But we can, since we see what's coming, we can prepare and organize to be able to preserve our way of life. And
well, there's another problem with this, which is that if you go through the church history and look at the emperors that we venerated, not a single one of them, maybe Justinian you could argue. Let's go with Constantine, since that's what I'm studying. Constantine did not ascend to the throne by just obeying the authorities and being a nice, peaceful Christian. Right. He went around, he killed his enemies and took...
He's still a saint. It's still Saint Constantine.
It is. I'm just making the point here that what the modern church tells you is the way to fix things is not what the church of ancient times actually did. And a lot of times, the things they did to become saints are things that the modern church would excommunicate you instantly for even thinking out loud, much less suggesting or doing.
That's why I'm Rocore, bro. That's why I'm
there is a bit of dissonance, let's say. We venerate emperors for throwing barbarians out of their country. Go ahead and name the barbarians today, and your bishop will write a letter. They will all come together in a little meeting and tell the world, oh, CNN, just so you know, we agree he's evil. We're going to excommunicate him. Just for even saying I'd like to protect the people of my country from certain barbarians. Let's not pretend that modern Orthodoxy has any real resemblance to what the ancient church was.
That's the key to what we were just saying. That's the key. We have, let's see, G.A.O. Keed. Do you know anything about Nietzsche? He says, did Nietzsche articulate the idea to, I guess, the relativism bit that you were talking about with Hitler? Relativism?
I believe that Nietzsche believed in Jesus Christ more than most Christians do, and I'll explain why. If he was really the atheist he made himself out to be, he would not have dedicated his entire life to attacking God. You only attack something that you believe is there and worthy of attack. So I think he spent more time thinking about God than most Christians do. So I think Nietzsche was LARPing. His entire career was just one big LARP. That's my opinion. He believed in God and he hated God because he knew he did not stack up and was never gonna meet the standards. So he decided it was basically a case of, well, if I can't have it, then I'm going to pretend I didn't want it in the first place, right? I can't reach the cookies, so you know what? I don't even want cookies. I want fruit snacks instead. So to me, that's Nietzsche.
Well, Womp Womp says, common people having political opinions has been disastrous. I'm too retarded for this. I agree. It's why democracy...
Self-awareness is the first thing. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Nobody has ever, to my knowledge, in my lifetime, ever even presented or articulated why universal suffrage democracy is a good thing. No argument has been presented to me ever. They'll just throw platitudes at you like freedom or equality or, meaningless buzzwords. But if you sit there and ask someone, why should someone who cannot run their own lives have a say in how other people's lives are run? There's no answer. People don't think. That's the real problem with this planet, is that the number of people who are actually capable of articulating what I would consider a thought is a very small group of people.
Did you say a thought?
A thought, not a thought. Not a thought.
Oh, Lord, deliver me.
Do thoughts have thoughts?
Deliver me.
Do thoughts have thoughts? I don't know.
Yes.
Sometimes thoughts become an empress. So, there's redemption available to everybody.
That was Saint Justinian's wife, correct?
He had the laws of the empire changed so that he could marry an actress, which in the ancient world was the same class as a prostitute.
Yeah, but she had a real conversion, though. She was pretty authentic with her orthodoxy.
Procopius would disagree, but that's a whole debate.
Yeah, well, Procopius he was an a-hole. Look,
Justinian hired him.
Father Chris Johnson, a good Rocor priest, is in the chat. Hello, Father Chris. Hello.
How's it going, Father?
So now I have to watch my language because it happens to be my priest. So yeah.
Well, you should be controlling your tongue anyway. Go read the Epistle of James.
Well, all right. Hey, people, we have a fairly decent, for a first live stream, we have like 20 people watching between the different platforms. Nice. Some of you should super chat because the money goes to my business and half of it goes to Brother Augustine. Now the other half pays for saintsedwardmedia.com. I can pay my writers to put out content and to, red pill people on traditionalism. So that's all right. That's my commercial for that. Do super chats before we go off.
There's another point I want to return to though. While we're waiting to see what's happening super chats. So one of the three angles I mentioned in the beginning was, doesn't matter what political system is in place for the salvation of our souls. And I think the answer to that has to be no. I think you could even argue that the worse things are, the greater the chance for martyrdom, which has all kinds of weird implications. But I'll give you an example. So a lot of guys on the internet, the Orthodox internet, are, they really want to return to the Byzantine style monarchy, right? This is like their thing. As if that's going to change people's hearts. And the truth is that the gospel cannot be compelled through law. If you had a nation where the law is externally, formally 100% pro-Orthodox, like Russia, for example, where it's mostly Orthodox law, it also has one of the highest abortion rates on the planet, as does Greece, another ostensibly Orthodox country. So I don't know if having an external Orthodox monarchy means anything if the gospel is not being spread appropriately. And I think that we have gutted the church by failing to evangelize, by failing to preach the gospel the way we should. And some archdioceses actually forbid the priests from proselytizing, from making converts. So I don't know how you can expect any meaningful change to happen in the hearts of people, which is what Christianity actually is. Christianity is not a political empire. It's not a set of laws. We can base the laws to Christian morals, but that still does not seem to have any bearing on people's behavior. unless they have received the gospel in their hearts and had a true regeneration. Not just going through the ritual of baptism, but actually the living, saving faith that changes your heart and changes your mind, and you do the work, working out your salvation with fear and trembling, that leads to growth in Christ and in virtue. If you're not doing that, the external political form of your country, I think, means absolutely nothing. And on some level, it's actually bad to have a Christian country with a really high abortion rate, because then you're just announcing to the world, by the way, we don't believe in this. And there's nothing about our faith that makes us live differently from the rest of the world. I would rather people have an overtly hostile to Christians government than a ostensibly Christian government where the people all live like atheists. Because at least one of those is more honest. Like I've said this before, I have more respect for an honest stripper, an atheist stripper, than I do for a girl who goes to church Sunday morning, throws her little hands in the air for Jesus, and then from Sunday afternoon to the following Sunday morning lives like a pagan, and then pretends to be Christian on Sunday. I have no respect for that girl. The stripper, I don't agree with her lifestyle, but you know what? At least she's telling the truth about who she is. So the truth of the gospel, breathing in people's hearts, that's what's important, more than the political system, I think. And that can be done in any system in which Christianity is legal to preach. And of course, Christians should be doing it even if it's not legal to preach. That's why there were so many martyrs in the beginning. Because in the Roman Empire, the rule for Jews was you're allowed to be Jews and have your own religions. You don't have to do the Roman sacrifices, but you're not allowed to convert people. So this is why the Christians had so many problems in the beginning, on top of the fact that demonic religions hate Jesus. It's that all of a sudden, to the Romans, Christians were just a sect of Jews breaking the Roman law, breaking the agreement that we had with them. They're not supposed to convert people. It's like this small sect of Jews breaking Roman law. This is also why the Jews were so mad. One of several reasons why they were so mad is because they were like, hey, why is this group of us breaking the law and bringing pain on the rest of us that are not breaking the Roman law? So we have to evangelize is the short version of what I'm saying, regardless of the system, because that's what matters, actually having the baptism of the Holy Spirit, as St. Simeon the New Theologian would say, which is not just going to church and knowing everything about the rituals. It's a living, breathing encounter with the living God that changes you from the inside out and makes you more like him. And now I will get off my soapbox.
We are honored to have Church of Entropy in the chat. That's Jennifer, I believe, unless I'm messing her name up. But
and what is the Church of Entropy?
Oh, she's subscribed to the channel. You'll see her. We'll bring her on the show. I don't want to. Let's not ruin that one. She'll make for an interesting show. But she actually has some interesting, like quantum physics stuff, like theories on quantum physics and whatnot that are quite interesting. And they go right over my head when I'm interviewing her, but I pretend like I know what I'm talking about. And it's great. Anyways. We already kind of moved on to liberal democracy, but other than being literally homosexual, what is liberal democracy?
Sorry, what was the second thing you said? I was laughing.
What is it? other than
liberal democracy is a system by which the synagogue of Satan, which is not only bad Jews, it also includes plenty of bad Gentiles.
You're going to get me in trouble again.
I don't care. I'm telling the truth. If my channel hasn't been banned yet, then yours won't either. No, I'm saying the synagogue of Satan is not just bad Jews. It's bad Gentiles too. Plenty of them. Liberal democracy. Hey, you asked me the question. Don't ask me a question you don't have the answer to. Liberal democracy is a system by which the synagogue of Satan maintains and expands its own power by presenting the illusion that what the people think makes any difference while pushing their agenda regardless of what people want. So it's an illusion. That's what it is. So liberal democracy is dumb both in its presented farce and what it really is. But most people in our country worship it. Look at Sean Hannity. Like, can you find a dumber person than Sean Hannity? We're not there worshiping freedom and capitalism. You saw him with Tucker, right?
Yeah,
if big tech wants to have a monopoly, that's capitalism. That's freedom for you. This guy is a retard. forgive my language. I shouldn't use the R word on your live stream, if ever. I try not to use it. My passions are free.
We all know that I'm going to end up only on D Live at some point. So
I get angry thinking about Republicans because, as long as we're talking about Codriano and fascism, he had a great quote. He once said, "If I had but one bullet faced with an enemy and a traitor, I would let the traitor have it." That's how I feel about Republicans. So let me just calm down, take some deep breaths, and recompose myself.
We have another non-super chat question that I think is interesting.
Look at these freeloaders. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. Seriously.
I answer all my comments on my channel.
Come on, Jennifer Scharf. Send the super chat on entropy. You're the one that pushed entropy. Now it's time for you to send the super chat through it.
No, you can't shame people into giving. Then you become.
I know.
Did you see that video with that Twitch thought who was like shaming her audience for not having $10?
Really?
Oh, it was it was a whole thing on YouTube. And her apology was really bad. Her apology was basically this: "I said something but didn't mean it." That was her whole apology. After making a whole speech about it. Sorry, I keep interrupting now.
That's the thought life. I know I said I love you, but I didn't mean it. Anyways, a good inquiry. What did Jesus mean when he said synagogue of Satan? So was he referring to your kinfolk?
So I believe that. So he uses that phrase twice in Revelation. It's Revelation. I want to say 2:9 and 3:9.
Hey, your audio is kind of.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're better.
I think I was covering my microphone. Jesus uses that phrase twice in the book of Revelation. I believe the verses are 2:9 and 3:9, where he says, "I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan." So this ties into the whole idea that, the New Testament says if they had believed in Moses, they would have believed in him, right? If they had believed in the prophets, if they were real Jews, they would become Christian. This is what I did. I am a completed, fulfilled Jew. I'm still ethnically Jewish. I grew up Reformed, atheist, left-wing Jewish. Christ is the Messiah of my people and of all people. I don't feel like less Jewish by becoming Christian. This is what my religion was always pointing.
You are the fulfillment of Jewish idealism.
I guess so. Fine. That's what the apostles were too. Fine. So the synagogue of Satan, he's referring to the Jews that, like the Pharisees, that were just really in it for power and money, that replaced the law of God written on their hearts with these stupid traditions they'd spent all these centuries writing out, the traditions of man, that never really believed in God at all. And so they rejected the Messiah because they wanted some secular or Jewish, quote unquote, political king to come rescue the Jewish people, instead of the spiritual king who rescued them in the real sense, in the spiritual, eternal sense. So I think that the synagogue of Satan in the Bible specifically meant the anti-Christian Jews that were always agitating against the Christians, martyring them, killing them, like the book of Acts, like you see the persecution of Christians by the non-believing Jews, which is exactly the same dynamic that has continued for the last 2,000 years. They tried to kill him once, they haven't stopped since. And so the way I was using it was really just kind of like the left-handed occultists, the secret societies, the Satanists, the Pizzagate people. But I was probably using the term inaccurately. I don't know if those people would count as the synagogue of Satan, but they're certainly Satanists. They're the people. So have you ever read any of Alice Bailey's work?
Negative.
Externalization of the hierarchy. So Father Spiridon Bailey wrote an excellent book and has an excellent YouTube channel. His book is called Orthodoxy and the Kingdom of Satan, which is an extension of Father Seraphim Rose's book, Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future.
I've read that.
Where he goes through Alice Bailey's 10 points, 10 ideological points that are the foundation for the United Nations, openly, this is not a secret, by which they take control of the earth. And the 10th step in her 10-point program is to co-opt the clergy and to helping with it. Obviously, if you look at the Catholic Church, there are plenty of Satanists LARPing as priests. Orthodoxy has some too. I've had to block a couple on Facebook. Obviously, the Ecumenical Patriarchate made a Freemason the patriarch in the 1920s, Meletius IV. And then things fell apart. Crazy how it'd be like that. So there are plenty of clergy that are part of the synagogue of Satan, which is why I don't care if a man is a priest. That means nothing to me until I know the person and look at the fruits of his life and interact with him and see how he lives, what he teaches, what his parishioners think. I think clericalism is a horrible thing, and it pains me that some people act from that point of view, because that's how you get things like this crazy pedophilia scandal in the Church of Rome. You get this, well, he's a priest, I have to do what he says, right? He has the magic vestments and the right title, so I have to listen to him just because that's what I'm told. And I think that's horrible. Blind obedience, I don't believe in. I think you should be obedient to a spiritual father who you have discerned, prayerfully discerned, is on the right team and is not in it for his own power, which plenty of Orthodox priests are. Don't kid yourself that that's not the case for us. They're all over Facebook telling you why they need to be worshipped, changing their Facebook picture 10 times a day to get the most likes. Scream, oh, they're out there. A monk that does that, in fact, an abbot, if you can believe it.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about. He didn't by chance say that persecution of Christians in the West isn't real? Is that somebody?
No, I think that guy's just an idiot. I'm talking about someone who's very... He's one of these... I don't want to speak ill of people, but there are people in the world, there are men of a certain character, or lack thereof, that in church hierarchy see the respect and worship they've always wanted. And they will join the hierarchy so that men will kiss their hand and call them father and wise. And you know them by their fruits. You will know these people. I've noticed this a number of times. If you, like when I was new to Orthodoxy, I don't know what monks are called in various traditions. If you call someone by their name, they will scream at you for not using the proper title. That's how you know you're dealing with one of these gamma omega type males that is not really in it for the right reasons. The monk you're referring to is an interesting case that I've talked about briefly on YouTube, but I try not to get too deep into, because I think that he means well and is just not very smart. I don't think he's actively malicious, is my read on that situation.
That's true. That's true. I kind of agree, because I've had discussions with him years ago. And
you did?
Yeah, and then I kind of picked up on that, and I was just like, it's not worth fighting. I just disassociated and just left him alone. But
Yeah.
I guess what I would tell him is, hey, why don't you come out here and try to have a job and keep your job after expressing traditional Christian sexual ethic values? Like, why don't you tell them what you think about gay marriage and then see if you still have a job? Like, that's persecution.
So there was an interesting thing with him in gay marriage. So there was a charge made against him, and did you see the video that the Real Med White put out?
I did. I saw that. Yeah.
So the charge made was that he told someone in person that he supported gay marriage, and they just weren't old enough to understand why it was okay. But then in the video he made responding to that video, he responded to a completely different charge. He said people are accusing him of supporting gay marriage because Orthodoxy in Dialogue supports that monk, which is not what the charge was. So the fact that he responded to something else is a bit questionable. I don't know what he believes on the topic. I was hoping he would address it. He kind of just snaked his way around it. I will say that Orthodoxy in Dialogue supporting someone is universally a bad sign.
I gotta say, that was the first publication to ever write a hit piece on me.
And me. We're both members of that club. We have that badge of honor.
We went to the elite status recently.
We did. We were catapulted to fame and notoriety. Thank you. Thank you, Giacomo Sanfilippo, for doing us this wonderful favor.
Yeah. Now we're in should I even mention the other one, or should we just let it go?
Just
let it go. Yeah. So anyways, Father Chris, I know his position on monarchy, so I know what he's getting here. He says, Father Jesus, he says, so is Jesus the only true king? And I'm just going to answer that, Father Chris, and I'm just going to say, Jesus is the King of Kings. And I will leave it at that.
That's a good answer.
So we live, obviously, under back to liberal democracy. We've established that it's homosexual and it doesn't work. So we live under this system. But
wait, can I interject for a second?
Sure.
I want to interject for a second. Somebody, just in case someone's listening doesn't understand, somebody being a homosexual does not mean they can't be part of the church. It doesn't mean they can't be saved. It doesn't mean the path of repentance is not open to them. and it doesn't mean that they should be attacked for their proclivity. I know gay Orthodox people who are doing their best to live in chastity. And I know people in my regular life, I actually know, so she considers herself a transgender lesbian, which I'm a little confused about. Obviously, she's not a Christian, but she has treated me with more respect and kindness than a lot of Orthodox Christians have. So I just want to be clear, even though the church is against gay marriage, obviously, that should not be taken to mean that we have some personal hatred of people based on the sins that they are enslaved to, or in some cases, enjoying being enslaved to. I don't feel any sort of dislike towards people based on their sin. I don't know if there's a hierarchy of sin. I don't know if being a prideful straight person is better to God than being a humble gay person. I don't know. It's not up to me to decide. So liberal democracy is gay in the way that, like, me and you used it as kids, where you just call things gay to insult them. But that doesn't mean that individual homosexual people or people of any particular, suffering from any particular sin, should be treated with any sort of particular malice. So I just want to clear.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even call them, honestly, I wouldn't even call those people homosexuals or gay, to be honest, because to me that's an identity, and you don't build your identity around your sins and your shortcomings. And so when you are actively repenting, even if you have same-sex attraction, you struggle with that. That's not gay and that's not homosexual. That's you struggle with same-sex attraction, and you are a Christian, and you are living according to as chaste as you can. And you know what? Let's be honest, we all screw up. So we all sin, we all make mistakes. But if you are actively turning away from your sin and repenting, going to confession, and you bring that up in confession, and you and your priest have that worked out, you are not homosexual and you are not gay. So
yeah, I mean, there's a story, I forgot the name. There's a saint, or at least a tradition about a saint. I'm not totally sold on all of these legends and stories, to be honest with you, but I think they teach good lessons. There's a story of a monk who was an alcoholic that scandalized all the other monks. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
I do, but go ahead and tell it.
So this guy was an alcoholic that was just drinking like 4 or 5 drinks a day, scandalizing everyone. They tried to get him thrown out of the monastery. And the guy ended up being canonized, if memory serves, or at least being called a saint, because it turned out that he was actually, that drinking 4 or 5 drinks a day was actually huge progress for where he started from. And that in God's eyes, only drinking 4 or 5 drinks a day for that particular guy on that particular path was worthy of being saved and going to heaven. So perfection is not expected. I'm just agreeing with the point you were making. So yes, we all screw up, but if you're screwing up less now than you were at the beginning, you're on the right track. People sometimes beat themselves up. They expect perfection of themselves. They get this despair. Oh, I screwed up. I looked at this thing. I did this action. It's like, okay, the fact that you feel bad about it is already really, really a good thing. It would be far worse if you didn't feel bad about it, which people don't always get. Like when I was still a Protestant, there were so many people sleeping with each other in that church. It was wild. And they didn't feel bad about it. Some of them didn't feel bad about it. And the pastor would often say, I hate to tell you this, if you don't feel bad about your sin, that doesn't mean God likes you. It means that you don't know him at all. So I think that's important to keep in mind. If you feel compunction at your own sin, if you feel convicted, the best thing you can do, if you shed tears when you're praying and repenting, whether that's in confession or at home or both, personally, I've shed more tears at my own sin privately in my repentance than I ever have in confession. Because by the time I get to confession, I've already worked through the repentance. I've already done that, the night before. If you are shedding tears at your own sin, you're on the right path no matter how much sin you're doing. I promise the repentance is worth more to God than the sin was worth to Satan, right? Look at what King David did. An adulterer, a murderer, and that gave birth to Psalm 51 and shows us the path of repentance, which is a wonderful thing. Thank God, right? Without repentance, we'd all be screwed.
Yeah, it's true.
Probably every day for most of us in thought, word, or deed in some capacity.
Hang on, I gotta plug my computer in. I forgot to do it before we started. It's cool. I have a live audience here that's helping. So they were supposed to bring me beer, but they failed.
Uh-oh.
I was trying to live that true.
Hey, we have another day of the Dormition fast, so chill on the booze.
Not me, my friend. Mine has not started yet. I am now old calendar, sir.
Is that canonical or is that some schismatic thing?
It's Rokor. It's canonical.
Are they all old calendar, Rokor?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And so are the Moscow Patriarchate churches as well.
You don't use the Freemason calendar that the rest of us are using? How dare you?
Of course not. No,
Yeah.
no.
But
But
that was the Masonic Patriarch that instituted the new calendar.
yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, I don't really. It's technically more accurate according to the axis of the Earth, but the manner in which it was adopted by the Church, from what I understand, is the most troublesome part. The manner.
It was the filioque of calendars.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Therefore, if you are a new calendar, you are a heretic. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Father Chris is going to be like, shut up, Michael. Shut up. But it was Father Chris Johnson who once told me that all outside of Rokor is darkness.
Sucks for the apostles.
No, they were Rokor. The apostles were Rokor.
Oh, they were? That's interesting because Russia didn't exist yet.
Yeah, they had a Church Slavonic King James.
Well, that was very forward thinking of them. That was one of the tongues they spoke on Pentecost was Slavonic, right?
The first liturgy was actually in Church Slavonic. So
why? Why would that be? Wasn't it in Jerusalem?
Because it's the angelic language. Okay.
Oh, okay. Is this one of those traditions?
No, I'm just messing with you. Yeah. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So, do we have anything? Where did we leave off? We got so far off track.
Liberal democracy. We were talking about.
Liberal democracy. All right. So it was totally vindicated by World War II, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, Patton himself said we fought the wrong enemy. I think that should tell you something.
And
he was the one that.
Want to expound on that?
I'll put it this way. Oh, I have to be so careful.
I'm sure a guy named Jared's watching, so. Good.
Jared, next time you want to write about me, why don't you email me first instead of making up lies? I'll be happy to mock you in email, I promise. We don't have to do this in public.
He emailed me first, but I had no idea you were going to be in it.
He called me a far-right writer. Look, this is the only book I've written. This is not a political book. It's about Freemasonry. This guy's a retard. I told myself I'm not going to use that word, man. I'm working on it. See, I told you I was going to sin in thought, word, or deed, and there we go. I'm proving my point. I'm a living example of what I'm saying. I'm trying to be a non-hypocrite here. I will expand on the point by saying, if the axis of evil had won World War II, we would not be in our present situation, and the world would not be drowning in various forms of communism. This is not an approval or validation of everything going on within this axis. There was a lot of horrible things done by the various powers that we defeated. But if you look at the aftermath, at the ultimate result, you could make an argument that things would have been better the other way around. Imperial Japan did many horrible things. They were not nice people. Defeating them also allowed Mao Zedong to rise to power, and he was not nice either. So, yeah, the fruits of World War II, despite what people like Sean Hannity might think, were not particularly wholesome. World wars are not wholesome. Nobody really wins. But we destroyed all of the powers keeping communism in check. That's an objective, historically verifiable fact. Now there's nothing stopping it at all. And look what we're doing. Our State Department now goes around the world forcing sodomy on Christian nations under the threat of sanctions. And you have all these evangelicals saying that Trump is the second coming of Jesus. He's the most Christian president we've ever had. You know, Pompeo is going around bringing globo homo to all these countries while our country is falling apart. Wouldn't it be nice to use those resources to fix our own country before we... I don't care about freedom in Hong Kong. That's meaningless to me. And now they're trying to overthrow the president of Belarus, who won the election with an 80% victory. There's no reason to think he cheated, but our State Department is now agitating the Antifa out there, which of course are organs of our intelligence community anyway, to try and overthrow the president. They're doing to him the same thing they try to do to any strongman kind of president anywhere in the world. And of course, there's also the fact that most of the strongman presidents are just controlled opposition. But people like, what's his name, Lukashenko? Is that the Belarusian president? People love that guy. He's out there playing hockey with the coronavirus.
Yeah, he's pretty
doesn't
awesome.
care.
He once said, somebody said, well, you're a dictator. And he said, well, it's better to be a dictator than gay. He actually said that. He's literally quoted for saying that.
That's funny. That's funny.
I think he said it back.
I have another quote that I would throw out there, but it's a bit unwholesome, so I won't.
Well, here I am being unwholesome, but
there's a woman in the Orthodox circles in my region of the world that is known for her support of every left-wing vicious thing. And I said something to her once that, the expression on her face was so beautiful. I wish I could repeat it here, but I'm trying to be wholesome. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to control my tongue.
Mr. Witcoff, we have DLive as a backup. It's quite all right.
It's not about that. It's about me. It's about my spiritual thing.
DLive.tv/Michael Sisco. We are good.
But what other people think is not the point. It's about me and the ideas that I proliferate into the world, the things that I put out there.
Maximus
it's not what goes into a man's stomach. What is it? There's a Bible verse I'm destroying. The point of the verse is it's what leaves a man's mouth that corrupts him, not what goes into the mouth. It's about fasting.
Okay, yeah. Maximus Wolf has subscribed to your channel. He says, you are a breath of fresh air, sir.
Oh, thank you. I'm just trying to make sense of things like everyone else is, honestly. People give me too much credit sometimes. I don't have everything figured out. I don't have the ultimate answers. And the more I learn, the less I think I actually understand. But thank you. I'm just trying to figure it out like everyone else. And if that helps other people, then thank God.
And Womp Womp says that Russia was literally named after Rokor. Few people know this. I agree.
Seems valid. Seems legit.
It's totally legit, man.
Yeah.
But just to get back into the liberal democracy thing, what philosophy is it rooted in? And what is why? How do we approach that as traditionalists and Christians?
Well, it depends what phase it's in. Liberal democracy and communism are just two shades of the same color. One always leads to the next. They are rooted in the same. You know what? Let me give you the easy answer. Apotheosis, man as God, is the philosophy of liberal democracy. That we are all God, we get to decide what's right and wrong, and that if we all vote for something being right or wrong, somehow it becomes right or wrong by virtue of our saying it. Well, obviously, right and wrong is not subject to a vote. This is one of the biggest problems. If most people vote for murder, that murder is okay, like with abortion, that doesn't make it okay. And we're saying, but we're God. We decide what's right or wrong. What the people want is what counts, not what some sky daddy wants, right? It's what the people want. So it's the idea that we are the arbiters of morality, that we decide how things should be. And it just comes from a rejection of authority, which is our whole country was founded on the rejection of authority. So it's the problem was kind of baked into the foundation, if you really want to go back deeply enough. The rejection of church authority was the point of America to begin with. So it's not a surprise that it fell apart the way it did or as quickly as it did, in my opinion. And I have to learn more about that. I don't know that much about the Revolutionary War. I actually know more about the Byzantine Empire than about the founding of my own country, as I guess would be the Orthodox way. But it's one of the things I need to study at some point.
Listen, Michael Witkoff, Donald Trump is going to win, and he's going to fix everything. He's literally going to drain. He's finally going to drain the swamp. Finally going to drain it, and we're all going to be okay. And then he's going to convert to Christianity.
It's going to be so drained. It's so drained for you, Sisco. Can you even? It's going to get so drained. You're going to get tired of how drained it is.
Exactly. It's going to be huge. We're going to drain it all.
So drained. Oh yeah, bigly drained for sure.
And then I'm going to get a mohawk, just like Brother Augustine.
I'm getting ready for the apocalypse, man. I'm thinking about putting my earrings back in too, but I feel like that might bring my whole old self back, and I'm not trying to get to that level. If I had a mohawk and earrings for a long time, it's a cool look. I don't know if it's vain. I'm kind of vain in general. It's one of my sins. I'm a bit of a narcissist. I wasn't for a while. I got really fat. I let my beard just get bushy and disgusting, and I felt like there was some spiritual value in that. But then I started working out again and decided I didn't want to be gross anymore. So maybe that was a step in the wrong direction. I honestly don't know. But yeah, I'm bringing it back a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how far it goes.
Yeah, well, Father Chris, he pointed out the people didn't vote for abortion. It was rammed down our throat by the Supreme Court. But
Fair point.
an act of Congress, like you can reverse a decision from the Supreme Court through legislative action.
Can you? We didn't vote for the Hart-Celler Act either. Look how that worked out.
I mean, we like the Constitution literally says that that you can through another branch. You know, we're supposed to have checks and balances. At what point did a judicial branch become the supreme branch over the other ones? So
because no one cares about the Constitution.
Exactly. So we have been electing the same politicians since 1970 72 that have done absolutely nothing about abortion. So 1973. Sorry about that.
Kurt Doolittle has the answer. We just need propertarianism. It'll fix everything.
You know what? He's been nothing but nice to me ever. So okay. I'm gonna be nice to him.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, he came on my podcast back in the day. By back in the day, I mean like.
Yeah, right before you came on my show. Yeah, you had just talked about the show.
Yeah, and then I saw him a couple of weeks ago, like a month ago, down in Richmond at his infamous rally.
That's one word for it.
Yeah. He was nice to me there too, and I will say,
I made a whole video about that.
Did you really?
There's a video I made called "Headaches, Drugs, and the End of Propertarianism," because I just had 2 weeks of cluster headaches when I made that video, which, if you've never experienced it, is the most pain that I think a human being can experience outside of being tortured. And it was related to that and my trying out different pharmaceutical solutions, let's say, to try and cure the headaches. And also that propertarianism was part of that video, yeah.
Yeah, well, I take more issue with the way that they handled it in the aftermath than what actually happened at the event.
Yeah, he handled it really, really poorly.
Because I was there, and nothing seemed as big of a deal in person as it was made out to be on the internet. And then but his reaction was absolutely absurd. So I will say that.
And then John Mark deleted himself from the entire internet.
Like, come on, dude. Don't.
Well, there's a strong chance that John Mark was a spook and that he got everyone's names and gathered everyone together. Then his operation was over, so he doesn't need to be John Mark anymore. It's very possible. I liked his videos. I was shielding his videos for a long time on my channel.
Yeah, you'd actually wanted to bring him on, didn't you?
I did. I reached out to him, or I tried to. He never got back to me. I also tried to reach out to Jesse Lee Peterson. I have not succeeded in that endeavor either.
Huh. Oh, really? Because I can probably make that happen.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
I'll see what I can do. Being a campaign manager for a little bit, kind of get you some interesting
connections, man.
Interesting connections. So, anyways, why don't you tell us about this strange book that you wrote?
Oh, this one?
Yeah, the one that I've never read before.
Yes. This book, I'm bad with these angles on this camera, is called On the Masons and Their Lies. It has an excellent cover of that painting of St. Michael the Archangel about to stab the devil through the neck.
Yes, that's my patron saint. That's my patron.
There you go. Some Orthodox didn't like this cover. They actually thought that he looks too feminine in this particular painting. But I think it's pretty masculine to yeet someone through the neck with a sword, so we're going to keep it. This book, so for those of you who don't know, who are listening, I used to be a Freemason. I was a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Freemason, which sounds like it means a lot more than it does. I was a Knight Templar in the York Rite, which is the upper third of that rite, which also is essentially meaningless because you can go through all this stuff pretty quickly without any real contribution, or nothing is really necessary to do any of this. I was an officer in 4 different groups. I won a Pike Award, which is a little statue of Albert Pike, for my masterful performance in the 4th degree Secret Master, where I don't remember the name of the role I played in that degree, but I was one of the guys giving one of the speeches. And I must say, I played the role to perfection. I didn't miss a single word in the whole degree. For those of you who don't know, Masonic degrees are plays where the different members play different roles and give different speeches to the candidate. That's what they are. It's like a mystery, any other mystery school would do. And I started becoming Christian while I was still a Freemason. For reasons I won't get into, I started reading the Bible, and I've actually never told that story fully, and I probably never will in public. But, because it's not a wholesome story. But it had a good outcome. It led me to God. And I became a Protestant. And lots of Masons are Christian. Lots of Christians are Masons, especially police, firefighters, any sort of civil engineer. Lots of those guys are Masons. So I used to wear my Masonic. I would go from the lodge to church sometimes, wearing a suit and my Masonic ring. And a couple times people confronted me on it, said, that's bad stuff, that's Illuminati, that's evil. I was like, ha, 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 you don't know what you're talking about, laugh them off and dismiss them. And they turned out to be right. The more I studied the Bible and prayed and was part of my church group, which was a Wesleyan church at the time, the more my spirit started to feel wrong in the lodge, specifically in the Royal Arch, where I was the Master of the Third Veil, was my officer title. And there was a day I still remember distinctly where I was in the lodge. We were preparing. We were all standing around with our little jewels and red aprons, which, by the way, the Gmail logo is the apron of the Royal Arch. If you were curious why it's a red envelope like that, it's not an envelope, it's an apron. And I just felt this deep conviction that something was not right. I wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't understand the feeling. And so I kept going back. Eventually I thought, well, I don't want to step down. I like being an officer. I had a great time in Masonry. There was only 2 people there I didn't like. I'm not trying to talk down to the guys there, most of whom mean well. They're just deceived, like I was. I decided I'll step down from the Royal Arch, which it's hard to do. You disappoint all the people there that helped bring you up and made you an officer and all this. Your friends, you're like disappointing your friends. It's not an easy decision to make. I thought I'll step down from the Royal Arch and resolve this bad feeling I have that I didn't really understand. And then I continued to go to the other degrees. I was in the Scottish Rite. I was a prompter for the 32nd degree a couple times, which means I would sit in a booth and all the actors would have a microphone in their ears. If they forgot a line, I would tell them the line. I had the script in front of me the whole degree. And then I started to get the same feeling in the other groups too. I thought, I don't get it. Like the Royal Arch felt bad. I left. Aren't I good now? And eventually it just became really clear to me that I just couldn't be in Freemasonry, that something was just wrong. My spiritual life had developed to a place where I was starting to get some discernment of the demonic. And Freemasonry was not the only occult thing I was into. I was in Amorc, the ancient mystical order of the Rosy Cross, which I left to join a Masonic group that said I couldn't be part of that and also part of that particular group in Masonry. I was involved with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, though I was not a member. I knew David and Leslie quite well. I was their internet marketer for a while. I helped them with marketing funnels and all that. David and Leslie Griffin, that is. I actually went to Las Vegas to be initiated into the Order of the Golden Dawn until a friend told me, well, Leslie is the high priestess, and she's going to have sex with you as part of your initiation. That's part of what it means to join, which I decided I didn't really want, Leslie is a brilliant woman, for the record. She is like a brilliant archaeologist and all this stuff. She's a cool person, like interpersonally, but she's like as pagan as they come. And I thought, you know what? That's David's wife. I was like, I just don't want to do that. So I actually spent 4 days in Vegas. I already had the hotel reservation. I spent 4 days there, met another Mason in my hotel. We got along well. This very rich dental surgeon out there. I don't remember where he was from, but I came home. I didn't join. I told him, I don't want to join. It turned out not to be true. She was not planning on having sex with me. That's not part of the initiation for the neophyte degree or whatever. But I had been turned away by that rumor that I've been told. So I came back. I've been part of all these other satanic or occult groups, if you will. I also had my own private practice with sigils. I'd studied Austin Osman Spare. So I was deep into the occult, is the point I'm making. I had designed my own rituals and imbued crystals with spirits in a certain case, drawn sigils on my body. I mean, I was really deep into the occult. And I started studying the Bible, going to this Wesleyan church, praying for discernment, eventually realized I had to leave Masonry. And it was the hardest decision of my entire life. It really was. because by that point, Masonry was my entire social circle. I'd spent 3 years with these guys. They were my friends. I'm still friends with a couple of them. Most of them don't like me now. One of them I think helped become Christian. He became a Baptist, Protestant. He hasn't left Masonry yet, but baby steps. I took the same path. And I remember I was in a hot tub. I've had many spiritual experiences in hot tubs. For some reason, they're just, I don't know, maybe it's like a rebaptism kind of thing. Who knows? I was in the hot tub and I was praying to God, and I was, I could tell he wanted me to leave Masonry. And I was praying and I said out loud, I said, if I leave Masonry, I won't have anything. I will not have a social circle. I will not have a reputation. I will not have the fanciness that comes with being part of the society. It's like, I really won't have anything. And I know that people will get mad. They'll say this is prelest or whatever. But I tell you, God spoke words into my heart saying, no, if you leave all that, you'll have me. God said this to me. And I burst into tears, man. I really did. And it was just like this overwhelming feeling of love that I was going to be safe with God. If I made this decision that he was not going to lead me astray, that everything I was sacrificing for him would be worth it. And it was by such an order of magnitude that it's hilarious that I ever thought that giving up Masonry was going to be something serious. But at that point in my life, it was something serious. It was the foundation of my lifestyle. So I left Freemasonry. I demitted. They tried to stop me from leaving, of course. I got a bunch of emails. If you ever want to come back, we'll welcome you, blah, blah, blah. A demit is when you leave, and then eventually they just suspend you for not paying your dues. That's kind of how you leave Masonry. And then I felt God put it on me to write this book, my testimony, not just to why I left, which is a very small part of the book. It's only the introduction. This book details the 4 satanic deceptions that Freemasonry uses to keep men away from Jesus. Because when I sat down and thought about my experiences and compared them to the Bible, I realized there were 4 main points at which Freemasonry departs from the gospel. And so I wrote this whole book on the Masons and their lies, and I went to Riverside to speak with Father Josiah Trenum. I was not Orthodox at this point. I saw his videos on YouTube and said, I got to meet this guy. So I was an inquirer at this point. And I went up there, and it took me like 20 minutes to get him alone in his office, but we talked for a while. I said, how can I make this book I've written useful to the kingdom of God? And he said, what you're doing is a great thing, but I encourage you not to publish anything until you're Orthodox. And so as my first act of Orthodox obedience, I agreed to that. I'd spent a year writing this or something, 8 months a year. I agreed, and I became a catechumen. Actually, I came home from that trip and became a catechumen that week. And then as I studied the church fathers and the saints and orthodoxy, I ended up completely rewriting the book from an Orthodox perspective. I published it the day I was baptized. I was like, well, I did what Father Josiah said. I'm Orthodox. I came home May 27th, Pentecost Sunday, and I published the book. It became a #1 bestseller very, very quickly because Neon Revolt, who is no longer on Facebook, he's now runs the biggest Q group on Gab. We disagree on a lot of topics, but the guy is still my friend. He wrote an article about me in this book when it first came out, where he put the introduction as some readable text on his website for free. And it became #1 bestseller on Amazon for the religious studies philosophy category, which was unbelievable. I mean, being a best-selling author had been a dream come true for me, but this book was not something I ever even considered might become a bestseller. That was not the point of the book. It was not a book I wrote to be a bestseller. Like, I'd written 2 books from a pro-Masonry perspective, or 1 book from a pro-Masonry perspective, that had become #2 in the Gnosticism category. And I was like, which sucked, because being #2 is just sucks. It's worse than not competing. Because then you're like, oh, it was so close. But that's neither here nor there. And then God gave me the desire of my heart, as he promises to do in the Psalms. He gave me the desire of my heart by this completely backwards, circuitous route, by which it had nothing to do with me wanting to be a writer. It was just me doing a good work for God, and he made it a bestseller. Unbelievable. You'll love to see it. Very shortly after that, a priest, an Antiochian priest from New York, emailed me, loved the book, he bought it, wanted me to consider making it a handbook for priests to help them, because he said at one point in his ministry, every adult man in his parish was a Freemason. despite all the condemnations of Freemasonry from the Orthodox Church, our clergy spends zero time, aside from Father Spiridon Bailey, ever talking about this topic in any way, or reminding people they're not supposed to be Freemasons. The clergy doesn't care, at least in my experience. In fact, I offered this book for free to every single Orthodox clergy in Southern California. Zero were interested. None of them cared, sadly. So I rewrote it as a handbook for priests, and I rewrote it so that even though it's written from an Orthodox perspective, on the Masons and their lies is helpful to all Christians, Protestant, Catholic, and Orthodox. That was part of my intention. I want this to be helpful for all of them. Because look, if you leave Masonry and become a Protestant because of this book, thank God, that's a step in the right direction. I'm happy if that happens. And I hope you continue to Orthodoxy eventually, but some people are not ready for the heavy, the solid meat of Orthodoxy. I wasn't ready. I could have never become Orthodox. I had to be Protestant first. That was the only path available for someone like me, one toe in the water at a time. That's a path that some people have to take, and I recognize that. I could never have gone from drawing satanic sigils on my body and imbuing crystals with the spirit of Mars to Orthodoxy. I had to learn all the other stuff first. And I give my Protestant church great credit for my conversion. They taught me who Jesus was, who the apostles were, what the Bible was. I didn't know any of this stuff beforehand. And Orthodoxy very rarely gives simple biblical sermons, which I think they should do and used to do. The church fathers did. I wish more modern clergy would do it. Oftentimes, sermons are just announcements. You know, what's happening in the church, what's happening with our parish. It's a shame. Clergy that don't preach prophetically, as they say, from the Bible, are doing a disservice to their parish. But anyway, this book has now been a bestseller in 4 different categories. So people love this book, which makes me so happy. It's gone all over the country. It's being translated right now into Serbian, in fact. A Serbian Orthodox reached out to me and offered to be volunteered. He said, we have a serious Mason problem in Serbia. Can I translate this for you? I said, of course, please do. That would be great. Hopefully it will continue to be translated into other languages. If anyone's listening and knows Greek or Russian, wants to translate it, I'll send you a copy for free, of course. I don't know any other languages. I can read Hebrew, but I don't know what I'm saying. I don't speak it fluently or anything conversationally. Anything I can do to help anyone who wants to translate it, please reach out if you're interested. I'm happy to help you. The more people this book reaches, the more souls we can rescue from the lodge and bring those men to church. Because Masonry is essentially the shadow church, as you know. You were a Mason, you know what I mean. It takes the liturgy and turns it upside down and makes it about something else. It's got a lot of the same movements and a lot of the same ritualistic. That's kind of what appealed to me about Freemasonry. I liked it, the rituals and all that stuff, the traditionalism of it, if you will. The structure of it, which is what's really appealing to me about Orthodoxy as well. So I got my ritual desire fulfilled in Orthodoxy now in a much holier way, obviously. Which is not to say that all Masons are bad people. Most of them are perfectly good people. They're family guys. They just go there because they like it. It's a charitable organization. But there's a lot of evil stuff beneath the surface that the good, the average Mason never sees or experiences or encounters at all. So that's what this book is. It's going through like the 33rd degree, like the philosophers of Masonry, what they said about religion, about Masonry, about Christianity. They kind of peels back the curtain a little bit of, is Masonry really just this nice philanthropic organization that makes good men better? Or is there something deeper and perhaps a bit more nefarious going on? So that is what On Masons and Their Lies is about. It's available on Amazon in Audible, Kindle, and paperback forms. And a lot of people have found great use in it, which makes me really spiritually fulfilled. I'm glad that this little book I wrote has done a lot of good, which makes me really happy.
I enjoyed it. I was lying when I said I didn't read it, but
Thank you.
I read it before I interviewed you last time. Well, the first time that I ever interviewed you years ago, actually.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of shows.
Yeah, but we actually got a super chat that didn't have time to interrupt you. Ephraim.
I'll shut up and I will shut up and receive the shekels then.
Ephraim gives us $10.
Thanks,
we
Ephraim.
appreciate that, Ephraim. Which economic system would be considered orthodox? Would distributism stand close? I don't know much about distributism. Do you?
It's a Catholic system, also called integralism, which I from what very, very little I understand, is the most Christian style of economics. Basically, it's just the reasonable Christian idea that the working class and the intellectual class should work together and not oppress each other, that the workers should not oppress their, I almost said slaves, their workers. Well, they treat them like slaves with terrible wages, oppressive working conditions, unsafe working conditions, lack of vacation time. And likewise, the workers should treat their masters, for lack of a better word, fairly, which is you don't constantly agitate for more money if you're making a living wage. You don't agitate for rebellion against them. You don't overthrow them and try to take their business for yourself. Because the working class and the intellectual class, they need each other. Neither one can do anything without the other. An architect cannot do anything without construction workers, right? It's just an idea in his head and on paper, on a blueprint. And construction workers can't do anything without an architect because they don't know what to build. They're both equally necessary, equally valuable. One gets paid more because of the nature of the work, and really the rarity of the mind that can do the work is really why they get paid more. It's for the rarity of what they can do. It's harder to be an architect than to be a construction worker. You're much more replaceable as a construction worker. That's why they get paid more. But it's the idea that they should work together as an integrated unit rather than as competing classes, as Marxism would do, to set one class against another. To me, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if orthodoxy has ever formulated an economic system. If not, we should. I'm surprised we haven't. It's really something we should probably do.
I'll get right on that. Alexander Dugan, I hear, has some pretty good ideas on that. Not that familiar, but I would say a good start would be a non-fiat currency. I think that would be a good place to start. Because
I will be right back. I'm gonna go run and grab some food. I'm getting hungry. So can you talk for 5 minutes without my presence?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Got it. All right. Well, cool. I can kind of go over some of the things that I didn't get a chance to when we first started my we were having issues with my audio, so I had to switch mics. Don't know what the quality is on this, but it's the built-in mic on the Logitech. But anyways, somebody did ask on DLive what other platforms we are on. We are on Facebook, on the Saints Edward Media Facebook page. We are also on YouTube, Saints Edward Media. Just type that in, you should find it. You can also watch it on my Twitter on the Periscope. That is what's my @? It's @Michael Sisco SE on Twitter. And I definitely need more Twitter followers, so shoot me some followers. Anyways, I do disagree with Witcoff on political activity. I do think that, my political beliefs are obviously the framework is based on my Orthodox faith, which is in direct contrast to the American civic religions, and that's expressed in different manifestations like progressivism, libertarianism, which is like hyper-individualism. And anyways, yes, I want to, we'll get into that more when Mike Witkoff is gone. But that wasn't 5 minutes, Michael. You cut me. Thought I was going to have
my red vine addiction. This is my greatest sin right here.
What is it? A Twizzler?
What are you, peasants? These are red vines. Twizzlers are for plebes.
What is a red vine?
They're real licorice. Twizzlers are garbage. Red vines are amazing.
I resent that. Twizzler is Hershey, and I love Hershey.
I wish they made these in chocolate like Twizzlers do. Maybe they do.
Maybe you should just stop crapping on Twizzlers and,
Sorry that I have standards in class.
Well, it looks like I have to get a new microphone at some point.
Chocolate red vines. Now I'm very curious about this.
Please about what?
Chocolate red vines and whether they make them.
I think we have.
Oh my gosh, they do. Oh wow, you love to see it.
Hey, what do you think? The Forest Rebel asked, what do you think of radical orthodoxy such as John Milbank?
I don't know who that is.
Me neither. What is as a former Womp Womp says, as a former occultist, What is your take on the surge in popularity of witchcraft among...
I see someone's comment on the screen. That's cool.
Yeah, I did that by accident. But,
oh, cool.
Apparently I can do that. I had no idea I could do that. Here's one. As a former occultist, whoa, look at that. What is your take on the surge in popularity of witchcraft among mostly young women?
Well, when you don't have men in charge of their education, this is what they will naturally fall into. Empowerment and feminism and the Jezebel spirit. There's a reason that women were supervised, let's say, for all of human history. And you see what happened. You see what happened when we don't have supervised.
I'm going to have fun with this little feature I just discovered.
I think homeschooling should make a comeback. That's my real answer. Witchcraft is being promoted as cool. You know, we have all these TV shows about it, all these celebrities into it. And they're very influenced by it because it's, you know, mystical and powerful. They think it's powerful and all this stuff. It's bad news. It's bad. And this one's a protein bar, Quest bar. Whoop. Another addiction of mine. Yeah, Quest. They make really tasty protein bars.
Yeah. Well, I have pizza waiting for me in the other room. Anyways, I guess we could get into we could kind of close with so you, from what I understand, you kind of have like a hands-off as a Christian approach, but I kind of view this as we're in the fourth quarter as with 14 points down, and we might have a chance to come back and save everything, but probably not, unlikely. So, but I do think we can kind of prepare for some other possibilities.
Are there any examples of a society recovering from the level of degradation that ours is currently in?
No, I don't think so.
No.
But I am an eternal optimist. But I do believe that we should prepare for the obvious and kind of organize and be intentional in trying to set up like a Benedict option of sorts. But I think it needs to be a little more sovereign and strong than the manner in which it's described by Rod Dreher. Does that make any sense?
Yes, I agree. So young guys are always curious, what do we do? What are you supposed to do about this? What's our plan to victory? Your plan to victory is that for the next probably 15 or 20 years, which I know is a longer time than you guys want to wait, build up your resources, network with a small number of people you trust, and survive. That's your plan of victory. There's nothing you're going to do in the short run that's going to make a difference. And I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I understand what you all want to do and why you want to do it. The ancient church would have handled this very, very differently. But we're in a position where we're essentially neutered by the fact that we don't live with an emperor. We literally can't do anything. No bishop is ever going to bless any sort of violent overtaking of anything, which I know is what a lot of you want to do. The emperors would have done that. You know, they had Belisarius to go take care of business. Or at least Justinian had Belisarius, a great general. So I urge you all to restrain that impulse. Please don't do anything violent. Please don't do anything stupid. It's not going to help. You're going to go to prison.
Are the Propertarians watching? Are the Propertarians watching right now? Do you hear this, Kurt?
I don't know. But please let me reiterate that. It's not going to help. You're going to go to prison. Trump's not going to pardon you. I cannot say this clearly enough. If you really care about helping, stay free, which means don't go to prison, so that you can help when it matters. We have to build something else before we can, fix anything, let's say.
I agree with that. Father Chris did point out, you said, has there ever been an example of a city turning it around on the brink that we're at? He said Nineveh. So I guess he's got a point there.
But they all repented.
Yeah. This country is not going to repent. So not yet. Not until they go through the humbling fire, so to speak.
What Father Chris is saying, he's saying we need to go around throwing sackcloth and ashes on all of the thoughts that we see throughout the day. I like that plan.
Heather, I think you got Heather on your little unsupervised woman comment. She said, "Who is going to homeschool?" Here we go. Who is going to homeschool your kids? Who's going to homeschool your kids? Unsupervised women?
First of all, why does she look familiar to me? Heather, have I interacted with you in the past in some capacity?
She's friends. We're probably mutual friends on. She's my favorite. She's actually a close friend of mine. So don't be too mean.
Okay, who's going to homeschool your kids? Well, there's different types of women chained in my basement. I think the smarter ones should be in charge of the education. No, I'm just kidding. My wife would be homeschooling my kids. I would never chain a woman to anything unless she was into that and we were married.
Man.
I said if we were married, it's consensual.
All right, that's just too weird. All right, why am I showing all these?
Was that too much?
That was a little too much. I think we're gonna have to end the stream now, Michael. Michael Witcoff.
I didn't make them that way.
I'm kidding. Any final? But for real, I think we're pretty much done. Any final thoughts?
Homeschooling should be done by women. That's the role of the wife, and she should be doing it under the supervision of her spiritual father. That's the short answer. The husband's we got stuff to do, ladies. I got to go make the bread. Daddy's got to make the bread and bring it home to pay for your sundresses or whatever it is you people wear. And then you can raise the child in a Christian manner so that they will become a productive citizen and not some morbidly obese thought parading through the streets in clothing that does not fit her. Why are you people doing this? It doesn't make sense. You look disgusting. Please stop doing it. We'll raise our child properly to wear clothing that fits and to be wholesome. That's my answer.
Amen. Now, like, follow, subscribe. If you're not on DLive, go on DLive because it's not going to get, at some point YouTube may decide that we're a little much for them. We seem safe for now, but go ahead and dlive.tv/Michael Sisco. Also, check out saintsedwardmedia.com. You can also support us through there. Every article has a little ask at the bottom, but check it out. Traditionalist news and opinion. And I think Michael Witcoff actually has some poems published on our site.
And there's a couple on the Society of Classical Poets website as well. Even though one of them, they might have been the same ones on your site. I'm not sure, but I am working on a project that involves poetry and which I hope to make available. Let me rephrase that. That's not good goal-oriented language. I'm working on a project which will be available by the end of this year, by the end of 2020. Nice. For those of you interested in poetry, specifically classical Western poetry, like in the vein of Shakespeare and Longfellow and Dante, like people that actually knew how rhyme and rhythm and meter worked, not like this terrible free verse that most people call poetry today that is really just bad prose with line breaks in it. If you're curious, keep an eye on my channel, Brother Augustine. I will announce it when it's ready. And yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate having me on. I repent if I got a little heated up talking about a couple of the different topics. I felt myself going into that mode. So I need to chill, I need to lean back in my chair, take some deep breaths, and remain dispassionate, as we say. I need to work on that.
It was fine. It was my pleasure. But also, just for those of you watching, if you want to, if you have any time on Sunday evening at about 4:30, I believe, Eastern time, we're going to be having on Endeavor for a nice little chat too. He's got a YouTube channel, and definitely go on Amazon and get On the Masons and Their Lies, and then come back Sunday, 4:30, to watch a live stream with Endeavor. Endeavor is an NRX guy, an old NRX guy. So I'm sure gonna be trashing democracy some more, which is gonna do wonders for my career in American politics.
Do you feel that it's kind of an easy target, though? I'm starting to think that the more I look at it, it's so stupid. It almost feels like I'm beating up the retarded kid at school. It's like, is this really even a challenge?
And you know what's funny? Normal people are starting to wake up to it. Like it's just like, well, I don't think this really works anymore. But whatever. So anyways, everybody, thank you for watching and have a good night.
See y'all later.